And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is my Modern Horizons 2 retrospective. That set's been out for about a year now. I can't remember exactly when the release date is, but it's been about a year, and so I like to go back and take a look at these sets and see how everything has shaken out, see how impactful they've been on the format, and Modern Horizons 2 has certainly been really impactful on the format. In fact, I think in my year-end review last year, I said that I thought Strixhaven was the best set from the year for Commander, and I think I changed my mind on that. I think Modern Horizons 2 is the most impactful set on the format from last year. In fact, it's probably one of the most impactful sets of all time. I mean, if we're talking about not actual Commander sets, it is right up there. I don't know if I could actually say it's number one, but it is certainly one of the most impactful sets on the Commander format of all time. I did a top 20 list. I talked about a lot of cards that, of course, we've seen a ton of in the format, and there's a bunch that I missed. There's so many cards from that set, and I haven't looked at it yet. Of course, I'm going to use EDH Rec to sort of go over how popular these cards are and how much they see play. Obviously, we all know a lot of these cards see a lot of play, and I actually am curious because I don't know a lot of these cards, how it all fell out. I know the cards that I use and the ones that I see all the time. As far as the Commanders go, I actually didn't think the Commanders were super great. There was some good ones, but the Commanders didn't really blow me away. And I think the Commanders are actually a lot more popular than what I had originally thought. So let's take a look. So of course, here we are on EDH Rec. The best database online, I find, at least. I like this site a lot. It's great for looking at all the statistics. And here we have the Commanders. And to no one's surprise, I'm pretty sure I called this that Chatterfang is the most popular commander from the set. 5,600 decks, that is a lot. When you up again, and for anyone who's not familiar with the numbers, getting up over 5,000 means it's a really popular commander that you're going to see a lot, right? And of course, Chatterfang, it's not just the Squirrel Tribal thing. I knew the Squirrel Tribal thing would really get people, but you don't have to do, like, and when I did a deck tech for it on my channel, I didn't do Squirrel Tribal at all because you don't have to, right? You don't have to do any Squirrel Tribal here. The really I mean, there's a lot going on with the Forest Walk and the Sacrifice, but the really powerful ability here is if one or more tokens would be created under your control, you get that plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens, right? And that to me is the build around. You don't have to do squirrels at all. The squirrels you're getting are just an added bonus, and that, of course, you can use that for the last ability. If you just look at a card like Bootlegger's Stash, as a lot of people pointed out, what a bananas card that is in this deck, right? Just tap all your lands to create treasure tokens, and you get that many squirrel tokens as well. I imagine that card is gone in a lot of Chatterfang decks. Sithis, Harvest Hand, no surprise there, right? Enchantment Tribal. I mean, whatever. No, there's not much to talk about. Obviously, just a fantastic commander if you want to be playing Enchantment Tribal. I would imagine this is the most popular. You got Tuvasa, right? And you got a couple others. This, I would imagine, like 5,300. Again, really, really popular commander. Even though it is one less color than Tuvasa, I imagine it is definitely the most popular enchantment commander now, for sure. Just because, again, you get the card draw, which is really what you want, but the life gain is just an added little bonus there that they just have to throw. It's just like with Tatiova. Man, I almost forgot her name. I haven't seen that deck in such a long time. It's like, why did you have to give the life gain as well? Like the card draw wasn't good enough. Lonus, Cryptozoologist, and look at the drop off here. Again, this to me, and I like looking at this kind of stuff. I find it very interesting. I'm a numbers guy. You look at the giant drop off here, 5,300 to 2,400. That's less than half. That's a massive drop off, right? So you have two really, really popular commanders. These guys are probably in the top 20 or 30 in the entire format. Huge drop off to Lonus. And that is why, like, when I did my top commanders from the set, I thought, there definitely is a couple here like Chatterfang and Sithis that are going to be super popular. And then I think like the rest were pretty, I won't say fringe. Like Lonus isn't fringe. You really could do just any good stuff creature deck with this. I didn't like the ability. Sacrifice X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may play a non-land permanent card with mana value. Like that's like, okay. Like if you get 4 clues out, you sacrifice 4 clues. You look at the top 4 cards. You might not hit anything, right? You can't use lands. If you could include lands in that ability, it would be great. But the fact that you can't hit lands is like, and it has to be a permanent. So if you know, it just feels bad. For me, I hate whiffs. I hate whiff abilities. And if I sack 4 clues, and by the way, clues draw you cards, right? So you could, and that's what I would do if I had this deck, is I would more likely be sacking those clues to draw cards or other effects like I do in my Denic deck. I use those clues for lots of different things. Using them for your Lonus's ability doesn't seem that great because you sack 4 clues, you look at the top 4 cards, and there's 2 lands, an instant, and a sorcery. So it's just a big old whiff. You just sacrifice those for nothing. For me, that ability, like I said when I talked about this guy originally, is just someone's board wiping. My commander's about to die anyway, or someone cast a meltdown and my clue tokens are about to go away anyway. Just roll the dice and see if I can get something. Garth One Eye, man, this one I thought would be a little more popular. It is a 5-color commander. I will say this though, the 5-color commanders when they first started coming out, you know, I talked about this in my commanders you don't see anymore video, and a lot of the 5-color commanders that they used to play like Atog, and Child of Alara just completely vanished because they started coming out with 5-color commanders that you could basically do anything with that deck. Like if you were just playing a 5-color good stuff deck or whatever theme you wanted, the 5-color commanders that they were coming out with, like Ramos and stuff like that, it really made them go away. And there is so many now. Like you got Sisay, you got Kenrith, you got all these fantastic 5-color commanders that when they come out with a really interesting one like Garth One Eye, it's you know, it's okay. 2,000 decks, that's pretty good. I have a patron with a Garth One Eye deck. He actually built his deck around Garth One Eye, sort of. You know, he's got lots of haste enablers, so he can use the ability right away. He makes lots of Black Lotuses. It's a pretty neat deck. It's sort of like a tap ability deck. So I think it's a great commander for a good stuff 5-color deck, just because he's removal in the command zone. He's an answer. You got artifact, enchantment, creature removal. You got regrowth effects, which is always going to be good. Card draw, and of course the Black Lotus effect, and then the Shivan Dragon, I guess, if you want to do that as well. I thought he would be a little more popular, but he's the 4th most popular from this. Again, I think he's not. If Garth One Eye had come out in like 2017 or something, would have been crazy popular. I think there's just so many great 5-color commanders now. That's part of the reason. Grist, yeah, people like this one still annoys me a little, how they skirt the rules with the whole if he's not on the battlefield, which, you know, if you look at the flip commanders from Kamigawa, the ones that are legendary on one side and not on the other, I'm just thinking you can't use those as your commander, but you can use this guy. He doesn't even say legendary creature on him. He doesn't even say this can be your commander. So, I mean, whatever. I'm not going to complain about the whole skirting the rules thing. I also have a patron with this deck, and man, does he make a lot of insect tokens with that. That's definitely a powerful option. Not surprised it's the 4th most popular from the set. This guy's a little surprising. I did not think people, even though this ability is really, really good. Planeswalker loyalty abilities, you activate, cost an additional +1 to activate, which of course means when you +1 something, you get an extra counter. That's fantastic. But again, only black and green, so you're limited on the planeswalkers you can use. You know, which I don't have a problem with. I just imagine maybe other people would. Traxa is, again, the most popular commander in the format, so I imagine there's a lot of people still doing the Super Friends with that. So you get 4 colors as opposed to 2. I mean, a lot of people just like the more colors. I imagine you don't have an issue finding enough great planeswalkers in Golgari colors, though. I can think of a bunch of great ones off the top of my head, and that ability is really good. So I guess that kind of makes sense. This one's surprising. General Ferris Recur. I did not think this guy was going to be so popular. I did this guy on my channel because I thought, well, this is not going to be one. You know, I thought I like to do the ones that maybe don't get enough attention. Nobody was talking about this guy. 1,300 decks is pretty good. Again, we have a huge drop off here, right? If you look at Chatterfang compared to General, like, whoo, that's a big drop off, right? So these guys are all like, you know, they're all over 1,000. They're pretty middling, you know, you're going to see them from time to time. Again, I have a patron with a General Ferris deck. That's kind of funny. If you look at, like, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 commanders that are over 1,000 decks. So that's really good for a set. For any set, that's really good. There's some here that are really surprising, though, like Zabaz. Wow. Again, I have a patron with this deck. That's funny. I think I have a patron with, like, definitely Chatterfang. I have a patron with a Chatterfang deck, a Sithis deck. I don't know about Lannis, but definitely Garth, Grist, Zabaz, and General Ferris. This is definitely one that's surprised. This is probably the biggest surprise. I did not think people would be going after this one. It's just such a, I mean, it's modular tribal, and they did print a bunch of great modular effects in the deck. The one that my patron has is really interesting, though. I did a deck doctor on it, and he did some really interesting things here. And like I thought, the pay one to destroy target artifact you control is, I think that's an interesting ability that you could go after, right? You could have Ugin's Nexus or something, right, where you can blast it for 1 red mana and take an extra turn, stuff like that. So that's sort of it definitely is way more popular than I thought it would be. I mean, it's an artifact creature commander, which makes your commander so susceptible to removal. That's kind of the drawback that I don't love, but it's definitely an interesting one. Ragavan. Looks like there's still like a $70 or $80 card here. Those damn Legacy players, hey? I think this got banned, didn't it, in Legacy? I don't really keep up on those things anymore. Yeah, just ridiculous value. 1 mana. I mean, I remember a day. Let's talk about, let's go back in the day, have one of those anecdotes again. A Savannah Lions, when I first started playing, a Savannah Lions was considered busted. It was just a 1 white mana 2/1. Having a 2/1 creature for 1 mana was considered to be too good. Jackal Pup was the best card. That was printed in Tempest, I believe. When I first started playing Magic, that was considered the best creature in the entire game, right? Or, well, I guess in Standard, right? So, and it was a 1 red mana 2/1 with a downside. Whenever it got damaged, you would take a damage, I think. And it was considered busted. And then you look at this today, like, man, and I understand this guy's legendary, so you can bump up the power a little bit, but it has the dash, which I guess you can use. I don't know if you're going to want to, but when it deals combat damage, you get a treasure token and you exile the top card of that player's library. So much value on a 1 mana creature. Maybe one of the best. Maybe one of the best 1 mana creatures of all time. They just went way too far with this. The flavor's great, right? Not exactly sure what people are doing with this deck other than just your commander's great value, but I'm not surprised it says this popular. Yusri, Fortune's Flame, again, did this one, did a deck tech for this one as well. And, you know, it's about where I would expect. It is, what I thought is, you know, you flip that many cards. For each flip you win, you draw a card, which of course is what you want. For each flip you lose, it deals 2 damage to you. So I thought, give it lifelink. There's not a lot of lifelink effects in blue and red, but you put a Basilisk Collar on this guy, and he now no longer has a downside because the damage he deals to you, you just gain right back. So you can just go nuts with the flipping, draw as many cards as you want, right? So it's whenever he attacks, but he's got flying. So yeah, there's really no drawback at all there. Other than that, though, I wonder what people are doing with the deck. I mean, you can do all the coin flipping stuff as well, obviously, right? So, yeah, I'm not surprised that guy's pretty popular. This one I'm really surprised at. Azmoran, and I took this deck apart. I no longer have this deck. I decided I really wanted to build my mono red Browlin discard, and I just don't like having decks that are very similar, even if they're in different colors. I mean, red or black and red, not really different colors. I was obviously using a lot of the same cards, so it was a lot easier to build that deck because I just took all the cards out of this deck. So that's part of the reason I took it apart. It's also way more popular. I did not think this was going to be so popular. And again, maybe it's a meme thing or like the name people like. It's funny. It's got no casting cost. It is a ridiculously unique card. No question about that. The sacrifice food ability I tried to build around, but it wasn't happening. There just is no food support in Rakdos colors at all, really. So I just went with a straight discard theme, which I imagine most people are doing. Like the food thing is just an added bonus. You make some foods with your Underworld cookbook, and then, you know, when you get a couple, you can use them to kill your opponent's creatures. So that's kind of handy. It is definitely like this one, like Azmoran and Zabaz. Those are the big surprises for me. I did not think this would have 1,000 decks. No way. Pyrrha the Volatile. This has kind of a lot of decks too. It really, I can't believe how popular a lot of these are. I did not think, like, there's a lot of commanders in here that are kind of underwhelming. Like, even Ragavan, even though it's a great creature, as a commander, like, I don't know what you're doing. I guess now with all the treasure support, there's probably a lot of stuff you can do with those treasures other than just, sacking them. It's a good value, but as a commander, like, I don't know. And again, Usri, they're all good, but not like there's isn't really a direction to go with it. So I'm actually kind of surprised how popular they are. Just because, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but usually the really popular ones are the ones that Chatterfang, Sithis, they're the ones that it's very obvious what you want to be doing. And so when I see Zabaz with over 1,000 decks or Azmoran, that's surprising. Piru even. Wow, I did not think I thought this guy was going to be really unpopular. He's essentially like the original Elder Dragons, and I wasn't sure. I thought they were going to do a cycle of this, right? This is just like the original Elder Dragons. 7/7 has the upkeep cost, which we haven't seen in forever. I really like that they did that. I thought that would scare people off, the fact that you have to pay that upkeep every turn. Apparently not. When he dies, deals 7 damage to each non-legendary creature, so I guess you could do a little bit of legendary tribal here. I mean, you're not going to kill your opponent's commanders, so that doesn't seem super great. And your commander cost 8. I'm actually really surprised that guy's that popular too. Same with AV Progenitor Ooze, another one. Again, a lot of these I just thought, I don't think people are going to go after them, but 758 is pretty good. I mean, mono green storm, right? there's not a lot you can do there. And 5 mana, when it isn't legendary if it's a token, right? And again, maybe this is the uniqueness of it, where you have Storm on a legendary creature like this. So you're going to get all those copies, but you're just going to get a bunch of vanilla Ooze copies, right? So that doesn't seem very exciting. And it must be, like, I haven't seen this deck in action. It must be really hard to Storm off and then cast your commander. Like, you have to cast 3 or 4 spells and then pay 5 for your commander in order to make this worth it, I would imagine. And then you just have a bunch of vanilla Ooze creatures that, I just think, I mean, it's an interesting deck, and I mean, I guess you could just do Ooze Tribal though, right? You don't have to Storm off at all. You could just, because he gets +1/+1 for each other Ooze you control. But then again, you just got a big vanilla creature. That's not super exciting, but I mean, it's interesting. I just don't know how exciting of a deck it makes. 758 is pretty good. Svailun of Sea and Sky. I don't think I've ever actually said that name before because I didn't talk about this commander at all. This feels like by the way, this is a modern set for those like Modern Horizons 2. It's a modern set. These cards are supposed to be for modern. That's why I'm like, I can't believe how good of a commander set this is. Like, who's going to use Garth One Eye in modern? Maybe Lonus, Ragavan for sure. General Ferris, I don't know. I don't know how many of these commanders were actually used in modern, as just regular cards, obviously not commanders. This is the one that definitely seems like a modern card to me, because Merfolk is really popular in modern, or at least used to be. And this is a good one. It's indestructible, draws cards, gives other Merfolk you control Ward 1. That's a great card for a Merfolk tribal deck in modern. It's middling here because it is, there's just way better options if you're doing Merfolk Tribal, typically, I think. Even though I find this to be interesting, I like the indestructible part. That's the one that I really like. I like when my commander's hard to remove. And then, and 686, like, look at, we're at the bottom here almost, and still 686. That's really impressive. Really impressive for a set as far as commanders go. And then, of course, another huge drop-off to Captain Ripley Vance, which, of course, I had a patron trying to build a deck around this guy. Didn't work because it's just really, really tough. You have to cast 3 spells in a turn just to put a counter on your Captain Ripley Vance, and then it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Even if this was when you cast your second spell each turn, it still wouldn't be great. It would be okay. If this was when you cast your second spell each turn, it does that stuff, it would probably be over here somewhere, like have like 600 or 700 decks, maybe. 3 spells, man, that's tough. My hat's off to anyone tackling that one. Thrasta did that in my Underwhelming Commander series. I thought I came up with an interesting idea there. Again, it's not popular. I mean, these bottom ones, Captain Ripley Vance, Thrasta Turok, no surprise there, right? Everyone probably knew. Like, this is just discard tribal, which people don't like, and it's doing it in not a great way either. Again, tiny bones, or there's just way better options if you're doing a discard tribal theme. And a discard tribal theme is just not very fun. A lot of people don't really like to play against it. And this one's even worse because it enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, target opponent discards 2 cards at random. So you have to pick on one guy, which is maybe not great. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you put a counter on it. So again, now you're just making a big. I mean, it's okay. I'm not shocked at all. It's at the bottom. Thrasta, I was not impressed with at all when I first saw it. And honestly, when I did in my Underwhelming Commander series, I thought I came up with a really neat idea of an artifact theme in mono green, where, because obviously you have a lot of these 0 mana artifacts, which is making it a lot easier for you to cast your commander. And then on top of that, you can, once the artifacts are in play, you can sacrifice them to do other stuff. I thought that was a pretty neat idea. But mostly not a lot of, I would say the big surprises for me are, I didn't think General Ferris would be that popular, even though I think it is a great commander. Hexproof and monocolored, that's great. And you can do the multicolored theme. You're making golems, so you can do the artifact creature theme. There's a lot you can do there. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Zabaz is a surprising one. Did not think that would be so popular. And Azmoran for sure. And probably Pyro as well. Those 3 are probably the ones that surprised me the most. All right, moving on to the 99 cards. And not a lot of surprises here, I'm sure. I'm going to say some very controversial stuff. So get ready to hit the comments, everybody, and let me have it. We'll start with Esper Sentinel, which is the most popular card from the set. No surprise to anybody. It is a great white card draw option. I'm not going to say anything about white card draw. I know you guys are expecting it. I'm done. I'm done talking about white card draw. I made my case, and now we'll just see how it plays out. Obviously a fantastic card. This is a card that I shoehorned into all my white decks right away, and man, it really hasn't, like, I guess maybe I'm just unlucky. I just don't draw a lot of cards off of it. Either people pay or they kill it right away. It has become the Ristic Study. It has become the white Ristic Study, where as soon as you play it, your opponents want to get it off the table immediately. So, and it kind of makes you a target, all that stuff. So, it's just the white Ristic Study as far as I'm concerned, which is a reason not to play it. Also, I just don't draw that many cards off of it, I find. So it's definitely good. It's a great card, no question. All right, the next 2 cards. Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. A lot of people were calling this the best card from the set, which I thought was absolutely bonkers. If you look at some of the set cards in this set, there's actually a few cards in this top row that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I'm just going to make a case for it. There is no reason not to put Yavimaya, Cradle and Growth in your deck if it's green. Okay, for sure. However, do you want to run out and buy this just to put it in your green deck for, like, what's the actual reason? It fixes you in green? You're playing a green deck. Why do you need to be fixed in green? Green doesn't have a problem fixing at all, right? So you're putting a non-basic land in your deck for what reason? To fix you? You shouldn't need to get fixed. You're in green, right? I mean, that's my thinking of it. I put this card in the deck. I put this in my Anema's 1 deck. And now why did I put this in my Anema's 1 deck? Because I have Urborg and Coffers in there. That's sort of what the deck is built around a little bit. And I actually found that I was having a problem because I was getting so much black mana. I was having a little bit of a problem getting green mana. So it was nice to be able to tap all my lands for green and black mana. Sure. And I know I'm going against what I just said. However, that deck works specifically a certain way where that is actually an issue, especially with just casting my commander. Also, the deck searches for lands. That's the deck. I have Temp with Discovery and Sylvan Scrying and all of that, so it's very easy for me to get my Yavimaya if I want to. So it was a great fit there. Other than that, like, I wouldn't put this. Why would you put this unless you have one lying around, right? If you have one lying around, great. But why would you run out and buy this to put it in your mono green deck? I don't know. Like, what's the reason for that, right? Unless, and again, you want your opponent's lands to be forest, like in that Jedid Ojanin deck that I did on my Underwarming Commander series. Obviously, if you're like, maybe you're playing the Chatterfang deck. So are people putting this in their Chatterfang deck? I guess probably. If you have creatures with Forest Walk, it works great there. I think this card got a little bit too much buzz because people were comparing it to Urborg. And it's not Urborg, right? Because there is no green coffers. The reason Urborg is so great, if there was no Cabal coffers, Urborg would be, it'd be okay. I mean, it would certainly not be nearly as popular. Most people, almost everyone plays Urborg because of Cabal coffers. If there was no coffers, nobody would play Urborg. I mean, I won't say nobody. People would still play it. It's still a usable card that has a powerful effect. Again, you can do the Swamp Walk thing. You can mana fix yourself. The mana fixing, again, doesn't really apply to green, I don't think, because shouldn't have an issue with that anyway. And there is no green coffers. So, right. So I think this card got a little bit too much love. And I see it's way down in price now. Looks like you can get it for like $9. It was way more expensive before because there was just so much buzz where everyone I think, was equating it to Urborg, where it's just not the same at all. Speaking of buzz, Urza Saga, and I don't own this card. I don't think I'll ever buy it. For me, I don't know. Dream Scenario, I play this turn 1. It taps for a colorless mana. Okay. So I can play my Soul Ring, I guess. I mean, you're going to want to go get your Soul Ring. So let's do the Dream Scenario. I play my Soul Ring, and then I get the Construct token, which I probably don't care about, right? Unless you're in an artifact theme. And then you get to search for a 0 or 1. So now you get to go get your Mana Crypt. So that's pretty good. Your land's dying, right? Which is not great. If you are in a lands deck, and my I believe my patron has this in his mono white Yomiji deck, because that's a lands deck. It's also an enchantment. So I thought this was a great include in my Ephemia deck, because that I did in my Underwhelming Commander series, because it is an enchantment going to the graveyard, so it works there as well. I like interesting fits like that. Construct Tribal maybe, or some sort of artifact theme where the Construct token actually matters. I think most people don't care about the Construct. I mean, you have to tap, right? So turn 2, I play a land, and then I have to tap both of my lands to make the Construct token. How many people are doing that? I don't think that happens very often, right? So I don't think most people are ever getting the Construct. I think it's turn 2, I have colorless mana, so now I probably can't really cast anything. And then on turn 3, I get to, like, that's the big one. I get to go search for my Soul Ring is the big one. For a guy who doesn't put Soul Ring in his decks anymore, that obviously doesn't help me. You can get other stuff, which is neat. Again, I just think this is a card that people just shoehorn into their decks and without actually thinking if it's actually helping them that much. It's a great card for sure. I'm sure it's great in other formats. In Commander, it's like, yeah, I mean, when this card first came out, everyone's like, okay, you go get your Soul Ring or your Mana Crypt. That's what you do with it, right? Maybe there's a specific 1 mana artifact or 0 mana artifact that you want in your deck, which would, again, a very fringe scenario that maybe will fit what you're doing here. I just don't think this is a card that you just throw into any deck. I mean, I don't at all. I don't think it's worth it to lose your land to go get a Soul Ring on turn 3. I mean, that just seems like, it's okay. It's a, what's it, a 1 mana boost, right? So, recursion, I think is the good way to go with this, whether it be enchantment or land recursion. I think it's a little overrated. Dauthi Voidwalker is not a little overrated. I had this very high on my list, maybe 2 or 3, because I knew it was going to see a ton of play. I'm actually surprised it's not even more popular. You could put it in any deck. It's always going to be great. It's one of the best graveyard hate cards out there. And then on top of that, it is, what I really like about it, and I've talked about this a lot, is if I'm in a mono black deck or maybe a Rakdos deck, I can't deal with enchantments. My opponent casts a Beast Within, it gets exiled, and now I get to use that Beast Within to get my opponent's Smothering Tithe off the table, right? That's another thing. It sort of cheats the color pie a little bit, which is what I really like about any of those cards in black that are casting your opponent's stuff are always going to be great for that. This one's the best, right? Or I gave the scenario of ramping, right? I can't ramp in my mono black deck. My opponent casts a rampant growth. It gets exiled after they cast it. And then on my turn, I'm land screwed. So I sacrifice, even though I don't want to sacrifice my Dauthi Voidwalker so soon, I do it so that I can cast that rampant growth and go get a swamp out of my deck. Just such a great card. Damn is another card that I think is a little overrated. As a removal spell, I mean, if I asked anybody, you want to pay black and a black to destroy target creature at sorcery speed, they'd be like, that's garbage. Nobody would play that, right? Yes, it is nice that it is, you can do either or. And again, overload 2 white, I cast a Wrath of God is And again, for me, Wrath of God would never ever, I would never put a Wrath of God in a deck. There's just way better options, in my opinion, depending on what you're doing in your deck, right? If I have a go wide strategy by invitation only is great. If I have a bunch of small creatures, austere command is great. If I, hollowed burial, if I want to tuck creatures, like you're in white and black, that's for me. When I looked at Dam, I thought, oh, that's interesting. But you're in white and black. You have all the best removal in the entire game. Damn, like I guess it's nice to have 2 mana. I destroy a creature on turn 2 that I really need to get off the table, and then later in the game I can cast the Overload. That's nice. For me, I just think that Orzhov has so much phenomenal removal that I would never be able to find room for this. And again, creature, I think people just put too much emphasis on the creature thing. I want to be able to remove any permanent, and black and white does that better than any other color. You have Despark, you have Vanishing Verse, you have Anguished Unmaking, you have Utter End. I want to be able, like, you're sitting there with a Dam in your hand and your opponent has a Smothering Tithe or Heuristic Study or whatever. Dam's not going to do nothing, right? Or a Planeswalker, or, it's just very vanilla creature removal. Very vanilla. I mean, 2 mana, destroy a creature is just very okay. I mean, the regenerating part doesn't usually apply at all. And then you just have a Wrath of God for 4 mana. That's okay. I don't love it. It's good. For me, I would never be able to find room for this in an Orzhov deck because there's just so much stuff above it, in my opinion. Exile, right? Again, Orzhov exiles really, really well. I would prefer that. And being able to hit more than just creatures. Orzhov does that better than any other color, so I would never be able to find room for this in my deck. Tireless Provisionary. Man, this card's popular, and this is one I didn't... Again, this is another one that flew under the radar for me. I mean, yeah, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food or treasure token. I wonder which one of those people are doing, right? No one's creating the food tokens. They're only creating the treasure tokens. Yeah, it goes in every landfall deck. I guess you could put it in almost any deck just to get that added ramp. It's definitely a card that flew under the radar for me. I'm not surprised it's popular at all. It's, again, this is what I'm talking about with Modern Horizons 2. There was so many cards that stuff like this, just I missed it because there was just so much to talk about. Like Ornithopter Paradise and Liquimetal Torque, which were these my top 2 cards from the set? Maybe. I don't know. They were right up there. Obviously, 2 of the most popular mana rocks in the format now. I can't believe they're not more popular. Ornithopter Paradise is it is a 2 mana rock that adds mana of any color, right? The only thing I can think is people don't like it because you can't tap it right away. But in my opinion, you play it on turn 2. What do you need to tap it for, right? Are you actually going to have something that you need to cast after you play it? All of the signets, which people love, right? The Boros Simic Signet, you can't do that either, right? You play them on turn 2 and you have to put mana into them, so you can't tap them right away. So Ornithopter Paradise is better than any of the signets, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe someone can make an argument why that's not the case. I think I would absolutely put Ornithopter Paradise in any deck over any of those signets. The fact that you can't tap it right away is who cares? And then the fact that it's a creature is an added bonus. Now I can use it as a chump blocker later in the game, or I can sacrifice it to some sacrifice creature effect, or I can, get an attack trigger or something. Like the downside to it being a creature, in my opinion, is offset by the upsides to it being a creature. So I can't believe it's not more popular. Liquimetal Torque, again, this card, I love it. I love it. Again, mono red, and mono green decks for sure have to have this card. They both destroy artifacts really, really well. Red doesn't deal with enchantments, so now you can turn your opponent's Heuristic Study into an artifact and then Vandal Blast. Green doesn't deal with creatures very well, so now you can turn your opponent's creature, their commander, into an artifact and kill it with your Nature's Claim. So I don't know, how is this not... And who cares that it adds colorless mana if you're a monocolor deck? In a 2-color deck, I would play this as well. Maybe a Rakdos deck. Again, because there's things you might have troubles dealing with. I can't believe this isn't more popular. It should be way more popular. I mean, it's not expensive. Neither of these are expensive, so it's just so good. And in a mono white deck as well. Mono white deals with everything really well, but why not throw this in there? Because it deals with artifacts really well, and now I can turn my opponent's, whatever. Think about this scenario. I have a Farewell, right? I don't want to exile all creatures because I want to keep my creatures. I want to exile all enchantments and graveyards or something, right? Now with my liquid metal torque, I can turn my opponent's. I guess I would have to exile artifacts. So I have to exile artifacts so I can turn my opponent's commander into an artifact. So now I get that one creature off the table without hitting any of mine, right? I mean, that it's just so versatile that way. And even if you don't do any of that, it's still a 2 mana rock. I would imagine. I'm going to check. Yeah, Thought Vessel. Still way more popular. Way more popular. I knew it. I was like, I bet Thought Vessel is more popular. I knew it. Way more popular. 164,000 decks. Yeah, that's nuts in my opinion. I just think like 37,000. Again, it's not expensive. Thought Vessel costs more than a liquid. You should be putting Liquid Metal Torque in your deck over Thought Vessel unless you're in a black deck that can't deal with artifacts, or even a blue deck, even a mono blue deck. I put Liquid Metal Torque because I have Resculpt and Raven Form, and there is the chance that I can exile, any non-land permanent essentially with that combination. And the Thought Vessel is like, okay, well, am I going to have a maximum hand size? I just don't. I usually don't, unless my deck is specifically drawing lots of cards. So this card should be way more popular. Academy Manufactor, which surprisingly, and you guys can go back and check, there was some content creators that weren't giving this any love at all. I had it way high on my list because I was thinking in the future, right? That's what you have when you evaluate these cards. You have to think, okay, going forward, right? Going forward, I knew there was going to be more clue commanders, there was going to be more food commanders, and there was certainly going to be more treasure commanders. I knew there was. So all of those decks were going to want an Academy Manufactor. I'm actually surprised it's this cheap. I thought it would be more expensive than that because we literally just got a ton more treasure commanders and probably a couple of clue commanders for sure. They all want this card. This card is bonkers. And by the way, I had a deck where I copied this. If you can copy this guy, really gets out of hand. If you have 2 Academy Manufactors in play and you create a treasure token, it gets out of hand fast, really fast. I mean, what else can you say? This card just goes in so many decks. Again, I'm surprised it's not more popular. Sword of Hearth and Home, of course, I had that on my list as well. It is one of the most popular swords in the format now. I mean, it's getting up there. I see this one a lot. A lot of people are just throwing this in any deck because it ramps. So it's a great ramp option. The blinking also is really, really nice in a lot of decks. Even if you're not doing a blinking deck, a lot of decks will just have an Eternal Witness. You're not doing a blinking theme. It's just a great creature, or you'll have a Ravenous Chupacabra or something like that that just happens to be on the table and you can blink it. So yeah, just a great card that goes in a lot of decks. No surprise there. Ragavan, no surprise there. If it wasn't a $75 card, it would probably be even more decks. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all that this guy's popular. It's just I guess you could do a treasure. Like if I was making a Gadrick deck or a, there is a lot of deck. Like if you just get away from it's a good stuff value card. There is a lot of decks this fits in. It fits in a lot of pirate themes because it's a pirate. It fits in a lot of treasure. Any treasure theme you could throw this in. Exile the top card of that player's library. So I guess you could put it in some of the exile tribal stuff. Because you are playing a card from exile. Yep. So it does fit in a lot of themes. If you just get away from the value-y stuff, it fits in a ton of themes. Any, commander where you want to be sacrificing artifact tokens or something, or artifacts in general, I could probably throw this in my Gerard deck if I wanted to shell out $75 for something that's, I don't necessarily need. It goes in a lot of decks. I think there's probably a lot of people that are putting this in their deck just because it's a good card. But even if you get past that, it does, because of all the things it's doing, it goes in a ton of decks. Ignoble Hierarch, and of course, this is one I didn't mention because it's just a mana dork. So I didn't think there was anything to talk about. Obviously, it's the Jund Noble Hierarch. This was number 1 for a long time. Ignoble Hierarch was right up here because it was just like anyone who had a Jund deck, it just throw it in there, right? If you have a Jund deck, you play it. It is in 25% of the decks it can go in, which means that all the decks that have black, red, and green, of all the decks on here, it's in 1/4 of them, which is a lot. That's a really high percentage. It's only in 25,000 decks, but of course you need at least those 3 colors to play it. Maybe people are playing this in their 5-color decks as well, just to help mana fix. So that's definitely a possibility. It's not a super cheap card, so I don't know if that's the best option if that's what you're doing, but certainly if you have a Jund deck, there's no reason not to put it in there. Profane Tutor, of course, which I mentioned. Pretty good tutor. It's right up there. It's definitely one because it's cheap. I like using it, right? It's a pretty cheap option. If you're looking for a tutor, you got to wait a couple turns, but that's not usually a big deal unless you want to like get your win con right away if you're in one of those decks. But if you're in a deck where you just have a lot of neat pieces that you're looking for that you don't necessarily need right now, it's a great tutor option. Really great. I like it. Again, I don't know if this gets used in Modern or other formats. In Commander, I think it's a great, nice, inexpensive tutor option. Sanctum Weaver. Yeah. Of course, we know where that's going, right? In all the enchantment tribal decks, for which, as we just saw with Sithis, there's a lot of those out there. Goblin and Narcomancer. That's a tough one. Goblin and Narcomancer. Each spell you cast that's red or green costs one less to cast. So again, just like with Ignoble Hierarch, I didn't talk about this at all. There's nothing to talk about. It just goes in those red and green decks. I wouldn't put this in any deck that, just like with the medallions, I put the medallions in my mono blue deck, my mono white deck, because all my spells, it's going to hit. I would put this in a red and green deck, and that's it. I wouldn't put this in a 3-color or 4-color deck. I don't think it's worth it to make room if it's not going to help your black spells or your blue spells or whatever. But in a red or green deck, yeah, you could just throw that in there. It's also a goblin and a shaman, which are some really popular creature types in those colors. So not surprised there. Timeless Witness. And shockingly, this is another one that I missed, which is crazy to think about since Eternal Witness is like my favorite creature of all time. It's a 4-mana Eternal Witness that also has Eternal Eyes. And yeah, this is one I missed. I'm not sure why. I guess it just didn't stand out to me, because I was just like, oh, it's just a more expensive Eternal Witness. But it's another option, right? Just because it is not the best option, and it has Eternal Eyes, which is great. I still think Eternal Witness is better. But just because it isn't the best option doesn't mean, and people say that to me all the time when I recommend a card on like my 10 cards video, like, oh, well, you could just play this instead. It's better. Yeah, but we're in a format where you have 99 cards. It's a 99 card singleton format. Why would you just want one option? You want several. And of course, stapled on a creature. These abilities are always better stapled on a creature. For me, I've never put regrowth in a deck ever. I just always prefer my ability stapled on creatures. Again, having that creature is like, I can chump with it. I can blink it. I can sacrifice it. I can get it back out of the graveyard. There's so many things you can do with that. So it's such a huge advantage to have that ability stapled on a creature, even if it costs a little bit more. All right, Harmonic Prodigy, and I'm going to end with this row. And I mean, Persist and Unmarked Grave, of course, two fantastic graveyard cards that I did mention on my top 20 from the set that I knew would see a lot of play. Of course, you could just put them in damn near any black graveyard theme. And Sithis Harvest Hand, which of course is a really popular commander, and then also in the 99 of every enchantment tribal deck. So no surprise there. Harmonic Prodigy. Harmonic Prodigy, I almost forgot this. This was number 1 on my list from Modern Horizons 2. And the reason why it was number 1 was not because it was the best card from the set. I think probably Liquid Metal Torque was the best card. Or maybe, Esper Sentinel. I really like Liquid Metal Torque. Dothy. If I had to actually pick a 1, 2, 3, it would probably be Liquid Metal Torque. That's right. I love that card. Dothy, Voidwalker, Esper Sentinel, probably from the set. The reason I had Harmonic Prodigy, because I thought it was an auto-include in so many decks. Having a card that is an absolute auto-include in so many decks just bumps it up the list. And then on top of that, you have a card that is making a lot of underwhelming commanders better. And a lot of people just looked at this and went, oh, it goes in a red shaman, which is not that popular, or red wizard tribal theme. I think that's what a lot of people look at this card and see. If you completely get away from that and just look at the decks where your commander is a shaman or a wizard and has a triggered ability, and there are an absolute ton. Again, I think I used Niv Mizzet as the best example. How is this not in every Niv Mizzet deck? I mean, it's only in 19,000 decks. That's not nearly enough. Why is this not in every Niv Mizzet deck? Because it has 2 triggered abilities that will both trigger twice. It's bananas in that deck. I have this in my Browlin deck because Browlin is a shaman. Why is this not in every Browlin deck? Because now every time you discard a card, you're dealing 2 damage to your opponents and putting 2 counters on your Browlin, right? This again, I play my Browlin deck. As soon as Harmonic Prodigy comes down, my opponents immediately try to get it off the table because they know how good it is in that deck. Any shaman or wizard, and again, there's got to be like at least 20 or 30. I'm serious. If you have a shaman, this is the last time I'm going to make a case for this card because I've done it a few times. If you have a shaman or wizard ignore the word tribal. Pretend I never said that, okay? If you have a shaman or a wizard as your commander that is red, check and see if it has a triggered ability, okay? Because this could be bonkers in your deck. Whenever, when, and at. That's how you know it's a triggered ability. For anyone who's not sure, right? Activated abilities won't work here. If the ability says whenever, when, or at, that's a triggered ability. And if it fits into that category, everything I just said there, it goes in that deck. This guy should be in 50,000 decks, I think. I mean, that's my opinion. So, and one of the reasons why I had him at number one, again, is because there's a lot of underwhelming, like a Browlin. Like my mono red Browlin deck now is a little bit better because of Harmonic Prodigy, right? So that's why I really like cards like this, because you have those underwhelming commanders that don't get a lot of love that now have, they get a little bit of help from a card like this. That's why I like it so much. But that's it. That's all. My Modern Horizons 2 retrospective. What do you guys think? What did I get wrong? I know I'm going to hear it about the Yavimaya, and I'm going to hear it about the Urza Saga, and I'm going to hear about the Dam. If you like those cards, that's great. I'm saying why I think they're great. A little overrated in my opinion. I think those are cards that people are shoehorning into a lot of decks that, I mean, for me, again, with Dam, what is the Orzhov removal spell you're taking out to put that in? I can't think of any that I would. There's so many ahead of it, in my opinion. I know it doubles as a board wipe, but there's so many great board wipes in Orzhov colors. That's my opinion. And again, Yavimaya could go in any green deck, sure, but do you want to spend the money just to put in a deck where it doesn't really do anything? Again, I don't think mana fix is that important when you're in green because you can do it already very easily. So that's just my opinion. When it comes down to a cost issue, and again, Urza Saga is like a $40 card. Are you just putting it in your deck because you think it's a good card, or is it actually doing something in your deck, right? I'm trying to save you guys money here, all right? Just think about it that way. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. But that's it for today, and thanks for tuning in.